Okay, so the storytelling is amazing. Again, following the arc of the story, getting to know Dr. Bernstein was great. It was interesting too because you watch the documentary and it's maybe like 35, 40 minutes in where it's all pretty much been like the bad side of the story, and you're wondering like
Right.
when's the good part going to come. But you also not only talk about the science, which is important, but you also you discuss the American Diabetes Association, for example. And there's certain lines that like can really hit home for certain people, like having Dr. Thomas Seyfried come on our show and say that cancer is a revenue creating disease. Like, boom, have that hit you upside the head. Think about that for
Right.
a second. And there was
Mhm.
something relatively early in the documentary where you're talking about the American Diabetes Association, where they're getting their funding. And the line said something like, and for the last 50 years, they've been spreading a lie that you don't need to change your diet for diabetes while all of these industries are profiting.
Mhm.
It's one of those lines you hear. I remember like exactly where I was the first time I heard it. Like, let that sink home. Can you tell us you why you decided not to do the runs and the bike rides and donate one more penny to the American Diabetes Association, the association that is supposed to be helping us out of this mess?
They're the problem. I mean, if we're going to keep going backwards, is it the doctor? No, maybe it's not the doctor. Maybe it's his medical school. No, but it's not the medical school. Who who's making the education? Like who's coming up with these guidelines? And it's the American Diabetes. So all fingers point back to the American Diabetes Association for me. I can't, there's so many reasons I can't give many of these places money, but I mean, that's the everything about them promotes sickness in the people they are supposed to protect. The American Diabetes Association posts holiday recipes with a cup of sweetened condensed milk, or, you know, blueberry this with a cup of sugar. And they're hiding behind the blueberry because people think a blueberry is healthy. They're making sick people sicker, and they're like lying in front of our faces. And fortunately, now it's fashionable to question what we're being told. I mean, I think we've come a long way since 2021 when it was released. I started filming in 2018. Back then, people weren't questioning. They got their little packet from the ADA. They got their Mickey Mouse cookbook that I talked about, and they just did that. But also, these organizations, if you look at the former JDRF, it's called Breakthrough now, for a few years ago, they posted where their money goes. I think it was something like 6% actually goes to research for a cure. And any organization that's going to host a pasta feed to raise money, I can't get behind that. So once my foundation was created, we've hosted a gala 3 times. We had to take a couple of years off because of COVID. Everything about the entire weekend is all food friendly. You don't hear like RD likes to say, the symphony of CGM alarms. The kids aren't running around bouncing off the walls with weird blood sugars. All the food is meant for them. It's healthy for them. Everyone feels supported. It's a community. I want to protect the people that our foundation serves, and that's children and families with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, along the way, when I was filming in Washington, D.C., for the documentary, I reached out to the new CEO for the American Diabetes Association. Her name was Tracy Brown. She was there for a few years back then. And I asked if she would meet with me. And she is an absolutely lovely, lovely human. My whole family went in and met with her at the office of the American Diabetes Association. She listened to us. She cared about our story. When she first took her position, she decided to do a learning tour. I don't know if you've heard about this. Hell, like part of hell might have frozen over because she decided to go visit Dr. Bernstein herself. And she implemented a low carb diet and came off of her metformin and her type 2 diabetes medications. Anyway, I made friends with her. She actually brought her team to South Dakota with me to do a problem solving session. She believed in what we were doing. She absolutely understood, loved children. Unfortunately, even the CEO for the American Diabetes Association isn't powerful enough to cause any sort of policy change from within. She left that job a year or two later. She's now with Walgreens. It was incredibly exciting and encouraging to see her visit with us, make the effort to come here, but also so sad to see her leave, because I think she was defeated. She knew that we weren't going to get anywhere.
Do you think she left on her own choice?
I don't want to assert
Fair.
my opinion.
Fair.
I'm not sure. I mean, she's an amazing woman. I mean, maybe she got a beautiful offer from Walmart. She still cares about people with diabetes because she still is trying to come up with programs at Walgreens to help them. But all I will say is it was very sad to lose her, because we had someone in a position of power who wanted something different for people.
I remember when that message first came out, that the president, the CEO of the American Diabetes Association is using low carb and reversing her disease. And it was like, oh, this is amazing. And I can't remember how long afterwards it was maybe a week or so. I hope I'm remembering this right. I've talked about this before. The video that she put out looked like a hostage video. She's sitting there and saying like, oh, well, low carbohydrate is one way, but there's lots of other different ways. And it looked like, I don't know if she was reading from a teleprompter or whatever, but that was a different person.
Totally. I mean, that's the best way I've heard it. It did look like a hostage video. I mean, how sad, but I guess I'm not shocked at this point.
I think back to all the 5Ks that I ran when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and like how many of my dollars went towards cancer research, versus all the other stuff they did. Those 5Ks were fueled by granola bars to begin with. And my mom didn't have a very good outcome anyway. Like, it's so ridiculous what these organizations can do. And I've been way too kind on them. I've always kind of had the thought of like, oh, they probably just don't know. They haven't found this stuff out. They thought a certain thing. And, now they don't know. And it is so clear by the way you present it. You talk about all the funding. These three main insulin makers are some of the top donors to the American Diabetes Association. Food companies, Coca-Cola, Kellogg's, you name it, they donate to the American Diabetes Association. That is straight up evil. That's terrible. What do you think they're going to say? And do you think they give two craps about whether somebody is getting better or whether somebody needs to buy more food and more insulin? It's ridiculous.
It is, but like, how come no one spotted it long ago? Like, it just happens in front of us and we go, well, okay, I guess that's how it is. Like, but the other thing is that insulin was originally sold to the world for $1.
That blew me
These
away.
companies supporting the American Diabetes Association, people can't afford insulin. 26-year-olds are dying because they're coming off their parents' insurance and they can't afford it. I don't know if you've heard this, but they're pulling one of our insulins off the market.
Levemir.
Levemir. Sorry, Levemir.
I said it wrong.
It's it's so upsetting. But I hope for change.
Yeah.
I think now that more people are aware of these things, something will have to give.
Yeah. We interviewed Allison Smart to talk about that. It's such an important thing. And I don't consider those things like, okay, they pull one insulin, we'll just use another insulin. Like, no, they're all different. They're used for different things. And pulling one is a big deal. So yeah, it's great that we have the advocacy work going on.
Right.
I just recently heard another interview from one of my absolute favorite people, Nina Teicholz, and she's on this podcast and she's talking about like, do you think this is going to be ground up or do you think this needs to be systematic? And she's saying like, well, we tried the grassroots thing for a while and not a lot of people know about this. So we tried to go to the very top and go to where the guidelines are made and get information out there. And how many letters did we all write to our senators and the government and all this stuff? And nothing seems to move the needle because there's so much money involved. And yeah, it's absolutely insane. You mentioned the cost of insulin and you featured a woman in the story, one of the parents who talks about buying the $400 vial of insulin. Can you maybe share the story that she shared in there? I don't want to spoil it all, but like, can you share the heartbreaking story that she tells?
Right. That was brutal. Oh gosh. They did not have insurance. They work in Hollywood. They don't have typical insurance, and her daughter had recently been diagnosed and she was in the chaos of figuring out her life, went to go draw up some insulin and dropped a full brand new vial of insulin that had cost her $400. It was just liquid on the floor. It's worth nothing. Yeah, that was brutal. And the fact that it ever got to $400 in the first place. It started out as $1. It was a humanitarian, children will die without this life-sustaining medication. And
What was
now
this quote? The Banting quote was like, yeah, "This isn't for me. This is for the
for
world."
the world, it's for the world. And now it's a cash cow. You're lucky if you can afford it.
Yep.
You people hoard it, right? That's not good either. People get some and they hoard it or max out their insurance amount so they can have it in case they ever can't afford it or other, there's a shortage, and there have been shortages recently. It's
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. And the way she phrased it too is that not only is that a liquid on the ground, that's my child's life-saving medication. This isn't optional for us,
no, right.